Agree or disagree with this statement: if John F. Kennedy had not been killed in '63, the world would be a very different place today. 55% agreed, only 34% disagreed. And despite those numbers, for all who remember it, the day JFK was shot was a day that time stood still. Our national correspondent Jamie Gangel looks back with 4 people who were eyewitnesses. Jamie, good morning.
Good morning, Bryant. Sam Kinney was a Secret Service agent. Nellie Connolly was the wife of Texas Governor John Connolly and was in the car with the Kennedys. Matt Kilduff, assistant press secretary to the president, had the grim task of announcing his death. And then finally, Evelyn Lincoln, who was his personal secretary. These 4 people remember every detail of that day in Dallas.
There's Mrs. Kennedy, and the crowd yells, "And the President of the United States."
We arose that morning early to go out and prepare the cars because it was raining, and we were trying to make a decision whether to leave the bubble top on or off. Skies broke, and so I said, well, there's a decision right there, no tops, because we are there on a political motorcade, and President Kennedy wanted to meet the people. I was driving the follow-up car right behind him.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade group.
And I saw the president grab his neck. And then by that time, there was 2 falling shots, just like a pow, pow. And all of a sudden, one lousy damn bullet will destroy this man and family. For what? The thing that brings tears to my eyes is every time, even to this day, when I see John saluting. That hits me very hard.
Car coming up now. We can see Mrs. Kennedy's pink suit. There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle, over the top of the car.
I ran over to the car, and Mrs. Kennedy was holding the president's head in her lap. But I'll be very frank with you, it still never occurred to me that I had just witnessed an assassination of the president. The physician told me that the president was dead. I realized then that I would have to make the announcement. I went to this area in the trauma area where they were holding President Johnson. And so I walked up to him, and really, I did not know Johnson that well. And I didn't know what to call him. And I called him Mr. President. And Lady Bird sort of screamed. Because that was the first indication that Lyndon Johnson had that John Kennedy was dead.
There was the terrible ride to Parkland Hospital. And for those in the presidential motorcade, the what-ifs, the guilt, were just beginning.
We ran side by side, Jackie holding on to the stretcher on one side, I'm running on the other.
The president's friend, Dave Powers, now director of the Kennedy Library in Boston, remembers talking to a grief-stricken Bill Greer, the Secret Service agent who drove Kennedy's car. What if they'd sped out of Dealey Plaza after the first shots, but before the fatal one?
I thought it always, and so did he, you know, Bill, all those agents were very close to us, and that they felt so bad.
If the driver of the president's car had stepped on the gas after the first 2 shots...
Yes.
What?
That president would be alive today, and he'd be 71 years old, and he'd be the director here, and and I'd be the assistant.
Tonight we dip back into our archives as we remember the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. If you are old enough, you remember where you were when it happened.
30 years ago, our Steve Onasorge found one Carolinian with a special story about that day. He's bringing back some of that interview. It's all new first at 4.
In the Carolinas, that November day was like today. Blue skies, thoughts of holidays, and then it happened.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade.
I was working on a car.
Mrs. Kennedy jumped up and grabbed Mr. Kennedy. She called, "Oh no."
And everybody was just stunned.
An unforgettable moment for everyone, especially for Bill Greer, who I interviewed in 1983.
When I was in the front seat, I was driving him when he was shot.
That's right, he was the Secret Service agent behind the wheel. The first shot he thought was a backfire. The second?
And I looked over my shoulder like this, and I saw the blood running down Governor Connolly's white shirt. And then I knew was trouble.
The fatal shot rang out just as he hit the gas. Minutes later, he was in the operating room as doctors tried to save Kennedy, but nothing could be done.
I got real shook up about it.
He stayed in the Secret Service just a couple more years before retiring to Waynesville. Nightmares of Dallas to blame.
I think that's what gave me ulcers.
He died 2 years after this interview. We still have the old tapes, the old films of what happened in Dallas. But anyone around during a historical milestone like 9/11, the Challenger disaster, Martin Luther King Jr., or the Kennedy assassination, we don't need the films. We remember. 50 years later, the feelings are still fresh.
I just felt horrible.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
In Morganton, Steve Onosorge, WBTV, on your side.
Who was Sam A. Kinney?
Well, Sam was a real good friend, and of course he was my neighbor. He lived about 25 feet from me. One evening back in '86, I stopped in to see Sam. It was kind of late at night, maybe 8:30. He made us a drink. He said, "Sit down, let's have a visit." So he started talking about his life in general, and when he left the Secret Service, and he started getting in detail about his days at the agency, and he said he definitely saw and heard the shot from the grassy knoll. He said, "I heard that, and I saw some smoke." I said, "Well, that's interesting because, you've never talked about that to me before." He said, "Well," and then he talked further on about a conspiracy. He says it's impossible to take out a president, a leader of a country like ours, without some kind of a conspiracy. He said one man can't do this. Could have happened, it may have happened this way, but when he said it, it had a lot more meaning. He was there. He was in the car behind the presidential limo. He had full field of vision, But then he told me something. It kind of is going to close the case on a 50-year-old mystery where the bullet CE-399 came from and how it got there. That's the bullet was found on the stretcher at Parkland Memorial Hospital. And Sam had found this while cleaning up the car and going through the presidential car. And he just picked it up and laid it on that stretcher. Never said a word. And when we got all done, he says, you can tell this stuff. And I said, okay, I'll tell it. If you want it out there, I'll tell it. He says, but I think you better wait until I die. I said, okay. I said, I hope it isn't any time soon. I thought the 50th anniversary was a good time to tell this because he wanted it told. I'm not looking for fame or fortune. I'm just the messenger here. I think he wanted to clear up the mystery of how that book, he wanted to get the car cleaned up, and he didn't want the president to be remembered like that. And he just thought he was doing something for his president, not even considering a crime scene. I'm sure at that day it was such a surprise and shock. I don't even think he even thought about it. But he was loyal to the president, and that's the way he took care of business. He was covering his back, and that was it. He didn't really go into great detail about it. As far as cleaning the car, he got the cars ready, put the top on them, and got them back to the airport, and got them loaded aboard the 130 and back to Edwards Air Force Base.
You're a Marine, from what I understand, and you've never been one to necessarily believe in conspiracies, but this really touched you, and this personal information that you received from Sam was important to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I was quite amazed that he trusted me with that information, He wanted it put forth. People who knew Sam, he was quite a straight shooter. People who know me know I wouldn't do something stupid like this if it wasn't true. But he picked who he would talk about it to. He just didn't talk about it to everybody. Kept, security on him. He even went to the Ford plant when they were being built. He would be there with the cars. And he stayed on as an agent until President Johnson came in and retired when President Johnson was in office.
Gary, let me ask you this. A lot of people are concerned about LBJ's role in this. Did he speak of LBJ as a suspicious party?
Well, one time we were visiting, and he said something to the effect of, you know, when something like this happens, you have to look to see who would benefit the most. And he said all the fingers were pointing at LBJ. He did say that.
How you feel this is so important?
The basic three topics that I wanted to get out was that he did feel and that a shot came from the grassy knoll. He said he saw smoke, heard the shot. He also thought that there was a conspiracy to shoot his president because one man couldn't do it. And he's probably right on the money. One man couldn't do it. He definitely wanted it out there. He asked me to take care of business after his death, and he was my friend, and I'm doing that today. It's a good time to get it out on the 50th, so it may have some impact. I hope it answers a question, confirms a couple. Glad to do it.